The whole objective here is not to make podcasts that are AI based so we can trick people into listening to them. The whole thing is to find which tools we can use in our business to help us be more efficient. For example, I can digest this information while I'm driving a car or walking on a treadmill or whatever it is. If you're too busy to read it, you can just listen to it in a car as a podcast, right? Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Brian Driscoll, and today we're continuing our AI talk. And I'm filling you in what I started doing this week. I'm starting to get into shape. So I got a walking thing, and I'm going to show you how I'm recording a podcast while walking on a treadmill using AI. So bear with me here because it's a new thing for me here on the AI stuff. We're learning really cool stuff, and I want to share it with you. So I'm going to jump right in here. What we're doing is I'm creating content for a podcast or any research, and then having two AI analyze the content and discuss it. How you can use this in a world. For example, if you wanted to do massive research on real estate, for example, or whatever we want, I'm going to show you how to do that. And if you're too busy to read it, you can just listen to it in a car as a podcast, right? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share my screen. And also the reason I'm walking on a treadmill here too, number one, I'm trying to get into shape early in the morning. But also to show you, too, you can do this stuff while doing other things. This is what AI is allowing us to do. I could never record a podcast while walking on a treadmill like this. But wait till you see what we come out with. All right, so you see my screen here. So initially what I did was I put in a prompt into, we're using Gemini. Right? So first I went to Gemini. Everyone who has Google Suite, or I think they call it Workspace now, has access to Gemini. So what I did was I came into deep research, and I came in here and I said, let's see here, the ways that Ripple can be proven from people doing kindness and ideas that can train a custom GPT to create a place where people can go to create ideas. Which actually, let's create one here. Well, let me show you the whole process, and I'm going to create one from scratch so you guys can watch it too. On real estate, right? So I click start. Here's the plan. I click start. It goes through here. It took like 10 minutes, and it came up with all this information, right? It's got charts, graphs, reports. So think about this. Number one, if you have a VA trying to research, first thing they're going to do, they're going to go through and grab all these URLs. They're going to find all the sources they want to use to track things. Next, then they're going to start compiling them. This might take like a week's worth of data. And you got thoughts under here too. So it might take like somebody a week to generate this report. So then what we're doing is we're just going to make this from scratch here. So we're going to do new chat, deep research. Let's think here. We're going to do, let me grab my old prompt here. We're going to change it to real estate. And this isn't even a super great prompt either. I'm just messing around with this stuff here, but I wanted to show you guys. So we're going to do deep research. Let's say the ways of ripple effect. Here, let's talk about this. We're going to, stop that. Okay, so, and here's what I like to do too. I don't know if this is going to work because I'm on a podcast recording here also, but I like using this Google click to start because then I can just talk my prompt, right? Let's see if it works. Okay, cool. So please research and determine what's happening in the real estate investor market right now with people grabbing deals off market, what the foreclosure rates are, what the pain points are with homeowners, and what the best ways are for real estate investors to get great deals. Please give specifics that I can train a custom GPT and create a place where people can go and ask questions about their specific market and what the dynamics in their market are, specifically in their city. Okay, so I lost half of that here. And see how it gets up here a little bit. So let's Let me turn this off. All right, so let's see what we got here. So let's see if, let me start this over. That's whacked. The ways the real estate market is changing for real estate investors in specific cities of the United States, primarily looking at distressed homeowners that are having issues selling their house, either to be in poor shape, pre-foreclosure, financial problems, or they want a fast sale and can't deal with listing it on the market. Please create a custom GPT to create a place where people can go and ask questions about their specific market so they know how to tailor their marketing to get them the best ROI and the most deals possible. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pop this in, and then we're going to wait. Might take like 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. So here it says, okay, research websites, and I'm just going to start. Normally I'd read this. We're just going to start and see what it does, right? So here's what we're doing. See, Divest Property Investment GPT. So what we're doing is we're going through here. This is researching, and ChatGPT also does this. I think ChatGPT limits it. Google right now, the Google Gemini, does not. Google is, I've messed with it a while ago too, and I wasn't super impressed. Now it's looking like it's pretty decent. So, and look, it's going through all these different websites. Now, granted, I'm just going to do this to show the examples. Normally, before I would do anything, I'm going to read through everything, make sure that it makes sense, right? Make sure it's accurate, things like that. But it's going through here, researching websites, city-specific, and then we're just going to let this go down here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this, export it, and export all the text. And then my goal is we're going to upload this, create a podcast with 2 people, also a Google tool, it's Google Notebook LM. They're going to talk back and forth on this topic. And for example, I can digest this information while I'm driving a car or walking on a treadmill or whatever it is. So you can see here, it's still going. Look at all these websites. And they're legit too. Property Radar, Deal Machine. Like I know those guys. Homes.com, looking in Reddit, Ballpoint Marketing. Let's see what other sites it's looking at here. Realtor, Money, Fred, Nolo, Resimply, YouTube. So like this is cool because it's outreaching. Like how long would it take? Well, there's even more sites up here. PR News, Nolo, Zillow, Bankrate, Ramsey. So it's going to all these. Like it would take me probably not even 20 minutes. It would probably take me like 10 minutes per website. First, I'd have to Google what I want. Then I'd have to go to the website. Then I'd have to read the website, see if I can see if that page actually has what I want, and then come back and take notes. This is going through all of this. And is this a new batch or is the same one? This is the same one here. So it's still working, right? So researching 95 websites. You can see over here too, it's only like a quarter way done. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait until this is done. And then we're going to show you how to do the next step. All right, so we got the whole way through here. It went through all the information, and here's what it puts out. Like, look at this. All this information. Type the distressed houses. So, cities. Like, this is a lot of information. It would take me forever to come up with something like this. Then it has all the sources, right? And then check this out. Sources read but are not in the report. So let's look at some of these sources. So we did cite Property Radar, Deal Machine. I didn't ask it to. It just did. Found these are relevant. Resimply, Ballpoint Marketing, Money.com, Resimply again, YouTube, Ramsey, Zillow, PR News, Realtor. And then sources not used. It's got some of these in here also, right? And then the thoughts. Okay, initial market scan. I've started looking into the current state of the U.S. market, especially with an eye on the specific what's happening. My initial focus is understanding whatever. It says my next step is research. And it goes through this, all right? So anyway, so a lot of this is like, okay, that's a lot of data. What do we do with it? So, and the reason I'm making this is last week I made an episode talking with just AI avatars. I was just messing around. Wasn't really an objective there other than to show you like what's available. And also you can't believe everything on the internet now. Now I want to start getting into, okay, how can I actually become smarter? Or how can I help people? Or how can we research better? So I want to start looking at things. It's like, okay, how can we be intentional on what we're using AI for? Not just being flashy and like cool. It's like, okay, so this is something that's interesting for me, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to export out right here into Docs. And it's going to pull it into this doc. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to download and I'm going to put it into a plain text TXT. Then I'm going to save it, right? And then we're coming over to Google or notebooklm.google. And if you're using Google, like Google Workspace or Google Suite, you should have access to this. You try it. We're going to create new. I'm going to grab it, distressed properties, and I'm going to upload. And then let's see, we're going to see what this does is, it says right here, deep dive conversation, 2 hosts only. I'm going to generate a conversation. This is going to do, hopefully, is create a podcast with 2 people talking back and forth about this information that I just uploaded. So like I said, what's really cool here is, how long did this take? This took like, I don't know, 7 minutes or something to create. And that's with me talking and walking. Takes 7 minutes, maybe 10 to compile the information. We're now uploading it. Now I'm creating a resource that I can listen to at the gym or in the car or anywhere else like that I don't have to read and go to all the different links, things like that. I can hear 2 people talking about it. Don't get me wrong. I got a disclaimer here. I did not read the content, which actually, let's take a look at it here real quick while it's uploading. So United States real estate market is currently navigating a period of moderate growth amidst the backdrop of sustained higher interest rates. Right? So we got shift sands, U.S. real estate market, trends, shifting regional dynamics. The housing market trajectory is not uniform across the United States. Very true. Let's see. Cities identified as Northeast and California's hot real estate markets, while Southern and Mountain West regions have experienced a cooling trend compared to previous years, right? Forecasting. Identifying distressed property opportunities, key indicators, foreclosure rates, housing affordability indexes, economic factors, the Biden administration assessment of the rise in homeless in 2024, which was partly attributed to the high cost of housing. So it goes through all that kind of stuff. Analyzing volumes. And look, I'm only on page 7 out of 25, right? So let's see, still generating. Types of distressed property. So let's see if I got it right. Properties in poor physical condition. Those in pre-foreclosure stage. Properties owned by homeowners facing financial difficulties. Those where owners need to sell quickly and cannot go through the traditional listing. And then it breaks it down. This stage occurs when a homeowner is defaulted. We know that. Foreclosure auctions, bank-owned REI, short sales, properties in poor condition. These are often identified through strategies like driving for dollars, where we actively look for signs, right? A disrepair. It's got fast sale needs. Cities, right? It's got all this. 5 navigating. Let's see where we're at here now. Still generating. So here's something interesting. Like, what do we have here? The metropolitan area examples. So San Jose and San Francisco, these areas yielded the highest foreclosure flipping points or profits in 2024. However, investors might also consider the high cost of living and potential expense competing in these markets. Very valid. Like, you can make a ton of money on a flip in San Francisco. It might cost you 20 grand to get the deal. Austin, San Antonio, cities showed the lowest median profits. While distressed properties might be available, the profitability might be lower compared to other regions, right? Cleveland, that's similar to Pittsburgh. High foreclosure rate and identified as favorable location for flipping. Let's see where we're at here. Now look at this. Failed to generate your audio conversation. Let's retry. All right, cool. So check this out. We got a audio file.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something that I think is super fascinating, distressed properties. Early 2025. We've got, a whole bunch of sources here, kind of market predictions, foreclosure data.
Yeah.
We even have...
So here's what we got. I'm going to put this file at the end of this podcast so you guys can listen to the whole podcast. Again, disclaimer. You saw, we did not read the content. So if you do this on your own, you're definitely going to want to read it. And then you have interactive mode, where you can interact also, which I'm not going to do today. We're going to just just mess with this original. So I can just download it, change playback speed. You can delete, you can do whatever you want. So anyways, this is just Journey. As you can see, we just recorded a podcast talking about distressed real estate. Not to even share with people. Like, the whole objective here is not to make podcasts that are AI based so we can trick people into listening to them. The whole thing is to find which tools we can use in our business to help us be more efficient. We're also not trying to replace employees. We're trying to find different ways to be more efficient. So for example, I can have my employees learn. I can give them the tools to level them up. So we're not just trying to say, hey, you know what? I want to be a one-man operation. We're trying to take our people and level them up too. So anyways, in this episode, this is what I found out this week. Wanted to share it with you guys. I'll keep you posted on what I find next week. And thanks for listening. Get out there, crush it, close some more deals. Stay tuned for the AI episode.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something that I think is super fascinating, distressed properties. Early 2025. We've got, a whole bunch of sources here, kind of market predictions, foreclosure data.
Yeah.
We even have some stuff on like the smart way to approach investing in this kind of niche market, all to give you, the learner, like a really clear view of what's happening and, where the opportunities might be hiding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the U.S. real estate scene right now, early 2025, it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Overall, we're seeing, moderate growth. Like JP Morgan, they're projecting something like a 3% bump in house prices for the whole year. But the thing is, interest rates, they're staying up there.
Yeah.
We're probably looking at mortgage rates around 6.7%. Maybe by the end of 2025. And that's what's making things so unique.
Yeah.
So you've got this stable market overall, but underneath there's this kind of this strain, financially. And that's where things get really interesting, especially if you're thinking about distressed properties.
It's almost like those little cracks in the foundation, those are the things that we're looking for.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying the market's not booming like crazy, but these interest rates, they just keep hanging on. That's got to be putting a lot of pressure on homeowners, right?
Yeah.
Leading to more of these distressed situations.
Oh, absolutely. It makes it so much tougher for new buyers to get in,
Right.
Especially those who maybe, need adjustable rate mortgages, or if something unexpected comes up, financially, that's a recipe for distress.
Yeah, and for you, the learner, you're always looking for that edge. This is it, right? We're not just talking about, your typical buying and selling. This is where owners, they need to sell quickly, and that creates opportunity.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting. It's not just the standard market churn, right? This is necessity.
Totally. So to really nail this kind of investing, what are the key things you got to understand?
3 big things.
Yeah.
First, you got to know your local market like the back of your hand. Real estate, it's hyper-local, right? What's happening in your neighborhood might be totally different from the next town over.
Right.
Second, the legal stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Huge. Distressed sales, they have their own rules.
Yeah.
And each state, they do things their own way. And then the third thing, this is if you're going directly to homeowners, you got to market it right. Okay,
so we've got our work cut out for us today. Lots to cover, but that's what we're here for, right? To give you, the learner, that shortcut. So let's get into it. Let's explore these shifting sands of the real estate market. What do we have first?
Okay, so we've got this moderate price increase prediction. It's modest, right? But then you add in these interest rates that just don't want to quit.
Yeah.
And you got to think, what does that do to affordability, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Then, we've got new home sales, like way up there. Highest they've been since 2007. So that's a lot of new places coming into the market. Could mean more competition, especially if you're thinking about flipping. But it could also be good, if you're looking for land or unfinished projects.
It's like a double-edged sword, right?
Exactly. And then there's this, it's been called the lock-in effect.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a lot of homeowners, they're staying put. They got those low mortgage rates they locked in a while back, and they don't want to give those up.
Right.
Makes sense, but it means fewer homes for sale, even though, it's slowly going up. So distressed properties, the ones where people have to sell, they become even more appealing, right? They're like this little pocket of opportunity.
Makes sense. They're kind of like the low-hanging fruit in a way.
You could say that, yeah.
But, the U.S. is huge, right? It's not just one big market. Things are changing in different ways all over the place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We got to think regional. Right?
Yeah.
Like big cities, they're expecting this resurgence in demand, people going back to the office, that kind of thing. That's going to push up prices. even for distressed properties
Right.
in those areas.
Right. So that's something to consider.
Definitely. But then you got those areas that were hot during the pandemic, the suburbs. They might cool off a bit.
Okay.
Initial buzz wears off, living costs go up, and suddenly those places might be a good deal for investors.
So it's like a seesaw, right? One goes up, the other goes down.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So right now, the hotspots, they're looking like the Northeast in California.
Okay.
And the ones kind of cooling off are the South and Mountain West. But then you get even more specific. Like in Florida, some cities, they got a ton of homes for sale right now. That could be good for someone looking for those very localized opportunities.
So we can't just rely on these national headlines. We gotta get into the weeds.
You got it. That's what it's all about, granular analysis. It's those local details that make all the difference. National trends, they're like a broad brushstroke, but the real picture, it's in the fine details.
Totally. Okay, so let's look forward a bit. Let's say 2025, what's the crystal ball saying?
Seems like 2025 is going to be pretty similar to 2024. Stable market, maybe a 4% bump in prices. Interest rates still high, probably around 7%, and not a lot of homes for sale.
So basically more the same, but maybe with some subtle shifts. Now we've got those different forecasting groups, your Zillows and Ramsey Solutions. Do they all agree on this 2025 prediction?
That's the thing, right? They see things a little differently. Like Zillow, they're saying it'll be a slower growth in home values and only a small bump in existing home sales. So their thinking is if you want to do well, you got to find those properties where you can add value, like fixer-uppers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you got Ramsey Solutions. They're saying mortgage rates are going to level out and we're not going to see a big crash. So for them, it's all about stability.
Steady as she goes.
Pretty much. And then Fannie Mae, they're the ones saying things are going to be slow because of affordability and that lock-in effect we talked about. So they think the real opportunities are going to be very specific.
So it sounds like 2025 will be a tough market for your average buyer, with those high rates and everything.
Yeah, won't be easy. But, and this is important, that actually creates an advantage for those looking at distressed properties. You're offering a way out for sellers who need to move, no matter what the market's doing. But you're right, those different predictions, they tell us one thing. You got to do your homework. Don't just rely on those big national numbers.
Totally agree. Due diligence is key. So, all right, let's get down to brass tacks here. How do we find these distressed properties? What should we be looking for?
The first thing to look at is foreclosure rates. Beginning of 2025, we saw this jump in filings and starts, especially in February. That's often a sign that more distressed properties are coming.
Okay.
But here's the interesting thing. Those completed foreclosures, the ones that become REOs, they're actually down.
So, hold on. More people are starting the foreclosure process, but fewer are actually losing their homes.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It could be that, the programs to help people are working better, or maybe in a stable market, they're finding ways to sell before the auction.
Okay, so that's good news for homeowners, but what does it mean for investors?
It means you got to be even more on top of things. Those rising filings, those are important, but they don't tell the whole story.
Gotcha. So even though overall rates are still pretty low compared to historical averages, are there any hotspots, any places where the learner should be focusing their attention?
Yeah, definitely. In February, Delaware, Illinois, Nevada, they all had higher rates. And for metro areas, Modesto in California, Lakeland in Florida, and Columbia, South Carolina, they had the highest overall. But if you're thinking bigger, like those metro areas with over 1 million people, Las Vegas, Riverside in California, and Philly, those are showing the highest rates. And that means a lot of potential properties.
All right, so we've got some starting points. Now, are these just blips or are these places that have been consistently, struggling?
Some of them, they're repeat offenders, like if you look back at 2024, Florida, New Jersey, Nevada, Illinois, South Carolina, they were always up there.
Okay.
And for cities, Lakeland again, Atlantic City, Columbia, Cleveland, Las Vegas, those names kept popping up. That kind of consistency, that can be helpful, right? You know where to look. But this trend, more starts but fewer completions, it's curious. It can mean longer timelines for investors.
So patience is a virtue.
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Or maybe it means you got to get creative, find ways to help those homeowners before it gets to that final stage.
Now, besides foreclosure rates, what about how affordable housing is in different places? That seems like it would play a role, right?
Totally. There's this thing called the Housing Affordability Index. It tells you how easy it is for a family to, get a mortgage on a typical house.
Okay.
Low number. It means housing is expensive, compared to what people earn. And that's when you see more risk of distress. In late 2024, the places struggling the most were mostly in California and Hawaii, San Jose, Honolulu, San Diego, San Francisco, even Naples and Florida. Those places, housing costs are a huge burden.
Yeah, that tracks. If it's tough to afford a house in the first place, any financial hiccup, that's gonna be a problem.
Exactly. What about those places where it's easier?
Right. The opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, so that's mostly Illinois and Maryland. Cities like Decatur, Cumberland, Springfield, Elmira in New York, Peoria. Not as much distress there because housing is relatively affordable. But the coasts, those are the tough ones. High prices everywhere. And that's a major problem for a lot of people. It's not just about buying, it's about staying in your home.
So these high prices, they're not just a problem for buyers, they're like a warning sign, right?
Exactly. When things are that stretched, that's when you got to think about getting in early, pre-foreclosure, short sales. Work with those homeowners before it gets too late.
So it's all about timing. And speaking of timing, we've got all these economic factors at play, too.
Oh, yeah. Those are huge.
Like interest rates, job losses, the whole shebang.
Those have a direct impact.
Absolutely.
We talked about how rising rates and high prices are making it hard to afford a house, especially in some places like Jacksonville and Tampa. But job losses, that's a killer. If you can't keep up with those mortgage payments, you're in trouble. Remember, even the Biden administration said that high housing costs are part of why we have so many people experiencing homelessness. It's that serious.
Yeah.
And Fannie Mae, JP Morgan, they're all saying affordability and interest rates, that's what's driving things.
It's like this perfect storm, right? All these factors coming together.
Yeah.
So keeping an eye on the local economy, that's crucial. Like, what's the unemployment rate? How healthy is the economy overall?
Exactly. Like if a city suddenly sees a big jump in unemployment, that's a red flag. You're probably going to see more distressed properties in the near future.
Okay, so we've covered how to find these distressed properties. Now let's talk about the market itself. What are the numbers telling us?
All right, so in 2024, across the whole U.S., there were 322,103 foreclosure filings. That's a little less than 2023, but way more than during the pandemic. It's like we're slowly going back to normal.
Okay.
Foreclosure starts. They were down about 6% from the year before, but still way up compared to 2021, 174%. But the weird thing is, REOs, the ones where banks take back the house, they were down 13%. That's way less than before the pandemic and way less than during the housing crisis.
So even though more foreclosures are starting, fewer are ending up with the bank. What's going on there?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe investors are getting involved earlier, buying them up before the bank steps in. Or maybe homeowners are finding ways to, get out from under before it gets to that point.
So less of a crisis situation, more of a, like you said, a gradual return to a normal market.
That's one way to look at it.
Okay, so what about the different types of distressed properties out there?
Oh, there's a whole bunch. You've got pre-foreclosure. That's when the homeowner missed payments, but the bank hasn't taken over yet.
Yeah.
You can actually reach out to the owner directly at this stage.
Okay.
Then there's the foreclosure options. You can get some good deals there, but it's all cash, and you might not even get to see the place beforehand.
Risky business.
Yeah. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then, if no one buys at auction, it becomes an REO. You buy it straight from the bank. You might even be able to get financing. And there are short sales where the bank agrees to take less money than what's owed.
Okay.
But those can be a headache, lots of paperwork and waiting. Then there are those houses that just need a lot of love.
The fixer-uppers.
Exactly. You find those by what they call driving for dollars, just driving around looking for places that need work. Or you get to know people, networking. Those can be great investments, but you got to be ready to put in some work.
Lots of potential, but also lots of potential headaches.
That's true. And don't forget, distress can come from more than just a mortgage. You've got tax liens, code violations, bankruptcy, and sometimes people just need to sell fast. Job loss, divorce, moving. They might be willing to take a lower price just to get it done quickly. Investors, they tend to pick their niche, what kind of distressed property they like to work with. It depends on how much risk they want to take, how much money they have, and what they're good at. Online platforms, they've made it easier to find these properties, but honestly, nothing beats getting out there yourself, talking to people, finding those hidden gems.
So what you're saying is don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
That's right. Now, you mentioned urban centers earlier. Were there any that stood out in terms of distressed properties?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
There were a few. Chicago and New York, lots of REOs, and foreclosure starts there. Houston and Philly also have a good amount of activity. Detroit's got a ton of REOs. And LA, well, it's a huge market, so even if the rate isn't the highest, there are still a lot of foreclosures happening just because of the sheer number of properties. In Florida, Miami and Lakeland are definitely ones to watch. And Las Vegas always seems to be up there in terms of foreclosure rates. So if you're looking for distressed properties, those are good places to start your research.
So we've got some leads, but finding the properties is just the first step. There's a whole legal side to this, right?
Absolutely. And it's not the same everywhere.
Right, because every state has its own laws.
Exactly. You've got two main types of foreclosure, judicial and non-judicial. Judicial means the courts are involved. Non-judicial, it's more straightforward.
So does that mean it's faster in non-judicial states?
Yeah, usually much faster. In judicial states, it can drag on for months, even years.
So what's the pros and cons of each?
Well, with judicial, you might have more time to negotiate with the homeowner, but you're also waiting longer to get your money back.
Okay.
And then each state has its own quirks, like those deficiency judgments. That's what happens if the sale doesn't cover the whole mortgage.
Oh, right.
And redemption periods.
Okay.
That's how long the old owner has to try and get the house back.
That's interesting.
And reinstatement rights. Can
Yeah.
the homeowner catch up on payments and stop the foreclosure? All those things, they can make a big difference for investors. It's not just about the property. It's about the rules of the game. You got to know those rules, like the longest timelines. Louisiana, Hawaii, New York, Wisconsin, Nevada,
And the fastest.
Montana, Mississippi, West Virginia, Wyoming, Minnesota.
Big difference.
Huge difference. So besides the whole foreclosure process, what about disclosures? Like, do you have to tell people about problems with the property?
That's a good question, and it's tricky. It depends on the state.
Of course it does. Some states, they make you fill out specific forms. And the rules can be different for houses versus commercial properties, or if you're selling as is.
So many variables.
I know, right?
Right.
And REOs, the ones from the bank or auction properties, they might have fewer rules, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do your homework. Always check the title, look for lens, get inspections. Don't just assume everything's fine because it's coming from a bank. And even at the city level, there can be weird rules. Like in New York City, they have this whole thing about distressed property consultants. And then there's federal law, like that lead paint disclosure for houses built before 78. Some states even make you say if someone died in the house.
So you're saying there's a lot more to it than just finding a cheap house?
Oh, yeah. The legal stuff can be a minefield. And don't forget, those local ordinances, the city and county rules, those can trip you up too. Some cities, they have these mediation programs which can slow things down even more. And they might have rules about what you can do with the property, like if you want to fix it up and rent it out. LA's got those rules about rent evictions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to be aware of all that stuff.
So you got to be a lawyer and a real estate expert. Now, if you're trying to buy these properties directly from homeowners, especially in pre-foreclosure, how do you reach them?
Okay, so here's the thing. You got to be really careful how you approach this.
Right, because these are people going through a tough time.
Exactly. They're stressed. They're scared. They might be embarrassed. You can't come in like some, slick salesperson. You got to be human.
So empathy is key.
Absolutely. You got to show them that you understand what they're going through and that you're there to help.
So how do you do that?
One way is to give them information. Write blog posts, make videos, create guides, explain their options, how to avoid foreclosure, how short sales work, all that stuff. When you do that, you're positioning yourself as an expert, someone they can trust.
So it's about building that relationship first.
Exactly. It's not about a quick sale. It's about a long-term relationship.
Okay, so after you've established that trust, how do you reach out to them directly?
There are a few ways. Direct mail can be really effective. You can send them personalized letters, with clear information and maybe some testimonials from other homeowners you've helped.
That makes sense.
Driving for dollars is another classic strategy. You literally drive around looking for properties that look neglected, and then you track down the owners.
Old school, but effective.
Yeah, sometimes the old ways are the best. And there are even apps now that can help you do that, crack properties and find owner information.
Technology, it's a beautiful thing.
It can be. And then you can try cold calling, although that's not always the most popular approach. And sometimes you just got to knock on doors. It's direct. It's personal.
Get brave.
It takes courage. And of course, you can't forget about online marketing. Having a strong online presence is essential.
Yeah, it's the 21st century.
Exactly. Social media is your friend. Facebook, Instagram, you can use those to target your ads to people in specific areas who might be struggling.
Okay.
And then there's SEO, making sure your website shows up when people search for things like avoid foreclosure or sell my house fast. You got to create content that addresses their needs, like blog posts about the benefits of selling to an investor. And there are online platforms that list distressed properties specifically. And email marketing, that's a good way to stay in touch with potential leads and keep them updated.
So many options. So you're saying you got to be everywhere.
Pretty much. You got to be visible and you got to be helpful.
And I imagine networking is important too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's everything. You got to build relationships with people who can help you.
Like who?
Real estate lawyers, especially those who know foreclosure law inside and out. Financial advisors and credit counselors, they work with people who are struggling. They might have leads. Other investors, wholesalers, real estate agents, they can all be valuable contacts. Get out there, go to local events, join real estate groups, meet people, even contractors and builders. They might know homeowners who are thinking about selling.
So it's all about building that network. And when you finally connect with a homeowner, what's your pitch?
You got to focus on the benefits for them. A quick sale, cash in hand, no more stress. And emphasize how much easier it is than going through the traditional listing process. No repairs, no waiting, no uncertainty. And always, always tailor your message to their specific situation. If they're facing foreclosure, let them know you can help them avoid that.
Okay, so I've talked about finding properties, the legal stuff, marketing. Let's talk about the good and the bad of investing in distressed properties, especially in those big cities.
All right, let's start with the challenges. In big cities, you've got a lot of competition.
Makes sense. More people, more investors.
Exactly. And that can drive up prices. Plus, you never know what you're going to find with these properties. They could be trashed, need a ton of work, and that gets expensive fast.
So due diligence is even more important in those cases.
Oh, yeah. And the legal stuff can be a nightmare. Liens, title issues, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And those markets, they tend to be more volatile.
Risky.
Definitely. And then you've got permitting delays, high renovation costs, tenants that might be a problem, financing can be tough, and if it's a judicial foreclosure state, you could be waiting forever. Plus, insurance can be sky high in some cities.
It sounds like you really got to know what you're doing.
You do, but there are also huge opportunities.
I was hoping you'd say that.
First of all, you can get these properties for cheap. Below market value, sometimes a huge discount. And there's less competition than with the regular listings, so you have more negotiating power. You can add value through renovations, make it worth more than what you paid for it. And if you're smart, you can flip it fast to make a nice profit. Plus, there's so many different types of properties and locations in big cities. You can find something that fits your strategy. And if you understand the market cycles, you can buy low and sell high.
So high risk, high reward.
That's the name of the game.
Now, I remember you mentioned some specific cities earlier. Can you tell us a little more about those in terms of these challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. So San Jose and San Francisco, they had the biggest profits for flipping in 2024.
Wow.
But those markets are expensive and competitive, so you got to be careful. Then you've got Austin, San Antonio, Houston. They had much lower profits. So while there might be distressed properties there, you might not make as much money.
Okay.
And then we saw some interesting trends in flipping activity. It went down in New Orleans, Charlotte, and Jacksonville, Florida.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like the market's shifting. But Chicago, Cleveland, New York, Philly, they all seem to be good bets for flipping right now.
Okay.
And Lakeland and Las Vegas, those places always have a lot of foreclosures. So if you're looking for a steady supply of properties, those are good options. But the bottom line is, you got to do your research. Every city is different.
All right, let's talk money. What kind of ROI can someone realistically expect from this kind of investing?
It could be pretty good, actually. I mean, back in 2014, the average ROI for flame distressed properties was around 21%. That's about $46,000 profit per house.
That's not bad.
And for rentals, you could get 10% to 20% annually. In 2024, the average ROI for flipping was around 30%, so there's definitely potential there.
But I imagine it depends on a lot of factors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The location is huge.
Yeah.
Like in 2024, the most profitable cities for flipping were San Jose, San Francisco, New York City, and San Diego. They were making six figures on these flips. But again, those are expensive markets. And then you've got places like Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, where the profits were way lower.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the money, it's about how active the market is. We saw a lot of flipping in places like Warner Robins, Macon, Atlanta, Columbus, Georgia, Memphis, Tennessee, and Cleveland.
So demand is important too.
Oh yeah, if no one's buying, it doesn't matter how cheap the property is. And then there are places like Portland, San Jose, Seattle, Honolulu, where there wasn't as much flipping.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like those markets are either saturated or there are other barriers.
Makes sense.
And if you're thinking about rentals, it's a little harder to find specific ROI numbers, but 10% to 20% annually is a good target. We've heard about good returns in Baltimore, Wichita, Kansas, and even specific areas like South Sonoran in Orlando. But you got to do your research on the local rental market. What are the rents like? How many people are looking for rentals? And factor in those renovation costs.
So you're saying there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
That's right. It's all about finding the right niche, the right market, the right strategy.
This has been a lot of information. For someone who's just starting out, it can be overwhelming. Are there any resources you recommend for, learning more and connecting with other investors?
Oh yeah, tons. Online forums are great. Bigger Pockets is a popular one. They've got a website, a huge Facebook group, all kinds of resources. Reddit's another good one, especially the real estate investing subreddit. And then there's city-data.com. They have these detailed profiles for different cities with forums where people talk about real estate, including foreclosures.
What about offline resources?
Local real estate investor groups are amazing. They have meetings, events, a chance to meet people face-to-face.
You can't beat that personal connection.
Definitely not. And when it comes to finding the properties themselves, there are some websites you should check out. Auction.com, RealtyTrack, foreclosure.com, the HUD Home Store, HomePath, Home Steps. They all list foreclosures, REOs, sometimes short sales.
Okay.
And then there are these more advanced platforms like PropStream and Deal Machine. They have all these tools for analyzing properties and finding leads. And don't forget about public records. You can find info on pre-foreclosures and tax liens on the county websites.
What about government resources?
There are some, HUD, of course, but the VA, the FDIC, even the IRS, they sell property sometimes.
Huh, never thought about that.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
Are there any particular types of real estate professionals that are especially helpful for distressed property investors?
Oh yeah, real estate agents who specialize in distressed properties, they're gold. They know the market, they have access to listings. And then you've got foreclosure lawyers. They can help you navigate the legal stuff. Probate lawyers, they handle estate sales, which can sometimes involve distressed properties. And wholesalers, they find deals and then pass them on to other investors.
So build your team, basically.
Exactly. You can't do it alone.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired and want to get started, what's your final piece of advice?
Well, first of all, remember that distressed property investing, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right. It takes work.
It takes work, it takes knowledge, and it takes patience. Do your research, understand the local market, do your due diligence on every property, and know the laws. And if you're working with homeowners, remember to be empathetic. They're going through a tough time, so be patient and helpful.
Great advice. And for those who want to learn more, check out those resources we mentioned. There's a whole community out there waiting to help you.
Absolutely. And as you learn more, think about this. We talked about how foreclosure starts are going up, but completions are going down. So what does that mean? What kind of new strategies can investors use to get these properties earlier, maybe even before they get to auction?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us today for another deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time.